The F-18, basically he was too low. He hit the back ramp of the carrier, and the
Oh,
jet
wow.
split in half. And so the fuselage goes screaming across the angle. The engines, they fall off the stern of the ship,
Wow.
and he punched out.
Welcome to the Calm and the Chaos podcast, where we discuss untold heroic experiences and dive into the mindset of the Navy's elite rescue swimmers. Hosted by former U.S. Navy Aviation rescue swimmer, Mount Everest solo summiteer, and best-selling author Brian Dickinson.
Hey everyone, it's Brian Dickinson. If you're enjoying these stories, please take a second to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. It helps more people find these conversations, and it keeps the mission alive. And if you want early access to new episodes and to support what we're building, consider becoming a Spotify paid subscriber. Your support means everything. Now let's jump in so others may live. All right, Collin Koss, excited to have you on here. We came so close to meeting in person like a week ago. I was in Scottsdale. I was dropping my son off at GCU and just didn't work out. So it's unfortunate, but here we are. I'm excited to have you on. I mean, just a crazy career going from rescue swimmer, the enlisted side, to going to retire as an 04. So just excited to hear about your experiences. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, no, Brian, thanks for having me on. It's been a journey for sure. One that I do over and over again. Just a very rewarding career, and being able to have the opportunity to work with some incredible individuals along the way. So again, yeah, thanks for doing what you do, and for the community, and then for everybody else listening too.
All right. Well, thank you. So, let's start at the beginning. Like, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Durango, Colorado. It's a small town in southwest Colorado region. Pretty small town. It's the high school was like less than 2,000 kids. So, it was in the mountains. So grew up, fishing, hunting, hiking, skiing. So it was a very active, childhood.
Yeah, that's awesome. My high school, we had 69 in my graduating class.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
In the mountains of Southern Oregon, so I totally get it. Like that's the good life, but not a lot of opportunity, exposure. So, a lot of people either stay forever or you leave and go experience the world. And the military is a
Yeah,
good way to do that.
absolutely.
So, what drove you to going into the military?
Well, so it kind of started my junior year. Grew up playing sports, and then the school I went to, they made you sign a contract that if you're an athlete, you would not, be at a party where there's alcohol, or you're not consume alcohol. So football was my main sport growing up. And then junior year, as a high school kids do, I went to a party. This is back before social media. So that Monday, some pictures surfaced at school, and it's like, half the football team drinking. So we all immediately got called into the athletic director's office, and he's like, okay, well, you guys signed a contract. You're at a party where there's alcohol. I assume that you guys are drinking. We're going to take away 20% of your football season senior year. So
Wow.
obviously that a lot of emotion wrapped up in that. Looked at the contract and it was like, well, it just says the next season. So, swimming's coming up. How hard could swimming be? Very naive of me to think that. So I joined the swim team, not really know how to swim, just so I could get that 20% eaten up in the swim season, and then I could play my full senior year of
Yeah,
football.
that's
But
smart.
yeah, so I in the process I fell in love with swimming, and then my grades weren't the best in high school, and so my dad was in the Navy, so I started kicking around the idea of joining the military. I went to the Navy recruiter's office, and there's a young second class named Steve Ayers. He was there. Yeah.
His
So
episode just dropped yesterday. Yeah, we're
yeah, I saw
good
that. It's
friends.
good to see him. Yeah. Great guy. Great guy.
Yeah, yes.
And he kind of he's like, what do you like to do? And I was like, well, turns out I'm a decent swimmer. And his eyes kind of lit up, and he's like, well, have you ever thought about being a rescue swimmer in the Navy? And at that point, a year before, I believe the movie The Perfect Storm came out. And granted, those guys were Air Force, but it just seemed like a very exciting career to jump out of a helicopter and help those in need. So I was sold from the beginning.
Nice.
And then as soon as I turned 18, signed up. And then when I was at MEPS, they told me that, they asked me when I was going to graduate, and that's May 20th. And the guy's like, well, if you leave on May 24th, we'll attach I believe it's like $11,000 bonus back then. So, yeah, that's big money to an 18-year-old back in 2001.
Mine was $1,000, and that was big to me.
Yeah, yeah. So, needless to say, it's a very short summer vacation. I was in boot camp, and I was getting letters from friends that were on their senior trip in Mexico, and I was like, man, what did I do? Like, I could be partying up on the beach in Mexico with all my friends, but yet here I am in Great Lakes in the lean and rest getting yelled at. So yeah. So I mean, it was obviously is a decision that put my life in a trajectory that I could never thought possible. So yeah.
Yeah, well, it's amazing how just everything kind of aligns and in the moment. Like, think about when you got busted for drinking because you were under contract, and just that pivotal moment, you could have stepped left or right and it could have changed that whole trajectory, but everything just kind of lined up. Swim team, like meeting, Blue. I mean, he's a rescue swimmer. He's had some incredible rescues, and just a good dude, always tried to do the right thing. So that's crazy. What's nuts is, what year was that?
So this is 2001, right before 9/11 hit. So
okay, and today is
9/11. Yeah.
So 2000, yeah. So like, when I went to high school, I graduated in 92. If we were caught drinking, like I played soccer, the coach was probably the one buying the booze for us. Like, things have changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
It was bad that, we went through that, but that's just how life was. So, wow. Okay. So you just went right to Great Lakes, and then right to Pensacola. So tell us about your aircrew rescue swimmer school experience.
So aircrew, I enjoyed it. It was obviously you're excited to be done with boot camp, but you still have that, that looking over your shoulder, make sure there's no RDCs when you cross the street type thing. But I remember the first morning of aircrew school, like we're in stash, right? So we're not officially classed up yet, but I overslept. I missed the morning muster. And when I woke up, it was that moment of like sheer panic. I'm like, oh man, like I'm in so much trouble. And so I ran down there, and there's a first class there. He's a mustering petty officer, and he saw like the fear, in my eyes, and he's like, hey, it's all good. Go grab breakfast. Make sure you don't do that again. So breezed through the rest of aircrew school. Yeah, yeah. And then unfortunately, like after the mile swim, somehow I developed, came down with like bronchitis. So, like coughing all the time, and it got so bad as far as coughing, I couldn't pass the run in the 1.5 PRT. And before that, I was running like right around a 9-minute 1.5 miles. So it was it obviously had a pretty big effect on my cardio. So I went med down, and then, I was really eager to resume training. I remember like I had to do a PRT to get classed up again. I remember like running and still coughing a lot, but I ended up I was like throwing up as I was running, and I was still able to beat like most of the guys on the track. And then so got reclassed up, and then 9/11 happened on a Wednesday, and that following Friday is when we did the scary march down to SAR school. You hear all those horror stories, so still kind of overcoming bronchitis. Still had a lot of, residual coughing. Once it started, it took a while for me to recover. But yeah,
that's one of those things that just lingers forever. It's so annoying.
Oh yeah, it was horrible. So, but got classed up at SAR school, and then we it was awakening from aircrew because, the instructors are a little bit more intense. And you're swimming and you're running every day. And then the thing that, when you're on the grinder, they're like, okay, we're going to do 20 push-ups, but those 20 push-ups could last,
An
20
hour.
minutes. Yeah, a long time.
Yep.
So it was good though. I've met a lot of lifelong buddies that early on in my career, and some guys that actually followed me, through the rest of training, and then also we're stationed in the squadron together. So it was a really really rewarding experience. Being in that class and meeting those individuals, and then hearing the stories from the instructors, kind of shed light on what's to come. So
hmm So what was the hardest part of rescue swimmer school?
besides bronchitis,
Yeah, I mean, you add that
yeah,
into it. So, I
yeah,
mean, even like the training, the sand that you're running through, it's this friction based or resistance
yes,
based, water's resistance based. These things that we don't really attribute, but when you factor in something physiological that you're going through, I mean, that's really, takes a certain person to get through on a good day. And then when you
yes.
add those factors in, that's super difficult.
I think it's just the overall grind, because you're always tired. And then being put on the spot, like when you're hanging from the pull-up bar, they say, recite the disentanglement procedures of a gated D-ring vest. And then so you're kind of like in a physical stress position, and then just trying to recite that from memory while you're obviously have a lot of distractors, we'll say.
Yep.
Um, but so that definitely, just the grind of it. And then we went through like six different class leaders in the first like 2 weeks. And then so in the last half of rescue swimmer school, they appointed me as class leader. And so I had that, I put that extra pressure on myself, to be the example, always be the first one there, and muster, be the last one to leave, organize training during our off hours. So, yeah, it was a grind for sure.
Do you think being being set as the class leader when you have, so much turnover, were these guys like getting rolled out or like what was the deal? Or they just
Uh,
suck?
yeah, we had a lot of rollouts. And then we had some fleet returnees in our class. And so like here I am as like an airman apprentice, and there's a couple of third classes there, and like it's just like as a third class, you don't want to, take, you know, feedback from a guy that's been in the Navy for just a few months. So,
hmm
kind of overcoming that leadership challenge,
hmm
early on. But it was all in all, I mean, it was 24 years ago, and I do remember, um, you know, always kind of being worried about the next evolution. Like I think that's the worst part is like the fear of like what's coming up next. But then
hmm
when you actually go through it, you're like, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So
That's a great lesson in life, just in general, because we worry about so many things that are outside of our control, and just showing up is half the battle. Like once you're
absolutely,
there, I mean, like public speaking, right? People they say most people would rather die than to be on stage and
yeah,
talk, unless it comes down to it, right? You just do it. But it's that anxiety that leads up to it, and then once you're there and you're on. I know for myself, I do a ton of public speaking because of my Everest experience.
right,
And it's still to this day, it's still the anxiety of just, it's a story I've told many times, but I know like I just get up, stand and deliver and you're fine. So it's
yeah,
crazy how much time we waste worrying about things that are not worth worrying about.
right. Your
Yeah.
mind always goes back to, or goes defaults to like the worst scenario possible, right?
hmm
So, but when you're actually in there, and then especially with the job as an AW, like the training's it's so impactful, and like it's such a brilliant design, and you kind of understand the reason why you go through that stress and training, because when in real world, when things go south, like it just it clicks, and so you just kind of, it's almost automatic. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely effective training. So, because there's such a high attrition rate, what do you think was different about you that got you through?
Um, One, I was just too young, uh, not to know any better.
So naive.
Yeah. And then one of the things that like they constantly kind of threatened is like, if you don't give 110%, if you don't pass this, you're going to the fleet undesignated.
Mhm.
And I remember in the locker room they had this picture of a guy, like a line shack guy, and he's got the resting gear, chains on his neck, and he just looks miserable. And there's a little caption underneath that said, "I didn't give 110%." And so, like every day when you leave the locker room, that's what you're seeing. So you're like, I don't want to. I mean, every job in the Navy is important, but for me, I was like,
Mhm.
I don't want to be that guy. So
It's
yeah,
funny how they could have had a poster sitting right next to it with a SAR crewman with a 50-pound bag of SAR gear and flight gear and
right,
carrying like an M240 and a couple ammo cans or a sauna buoy or something. And like,
right, yeah,
just misery in a different way. But, just, you're right. Every job is super important. And I totally respect that more as I've been out, and you just kind of see all the parts, when you take a step back sometimes when you're like on the ground level, it's hard to see what is it, the forest through the trees, or however that thing goes. But yeah, whatever your motivation, man, it's that's what it takes.
yeah,
That's cool. So from there you went to AW school?
yeah. And that was in Pensacola as well. And
Hmm.
AW school was just, it's obviously heavy academics, and so like you got to memorize all these, math equations. You got to, memorize different characteristics of the sub, and like a lot of guys in that going through that pipeline, we weren't. Most of us weren't valedictorians, so most of us didn't really, you know, spend a lot of time in the books, at least in my class. And so learning how to study, and I barely, I never failed any exams, but I mean, it was pretty close a few times. So the
Okay.
academic stress was definitely for me, is more stressful than the physical attributes of rescue swimmer school.
I know, it almost feels like it's physically a lot of us are like extreme athletes. You go in there and you have just more control in that space. And then when you're, I don't know, like A school, especially when we're behind, secret clearance and you're behind the locked doors and everything, it's like, here, learn. For when I went through, is like, look at these grams. Here's a spike at this frequency. What sub and what's that attributing to, like how many rotations on a screw of a
Right.
Russian Typhoon or something. And now we're going to take a test on all of that in the next 30 minutes. You're like,
Yeah.
it's like the fear.
Yeah.
And then you already made it through SAR school, everything else. It's like, is that going to be ripped from you? Are you going to go in undesignated, or now you're going to have all that arresting gear around you? And,
Right.
you know, it's, it's a crazy experience. But yeah, I think most people, you just kind of barely get through it. And then once you actually get to the fleet and you start utilizing at least the key components that are applicable, because you learn a lot of
Mhm.
things that you never really use.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like generalized, because you never know, where you're actually going to be placed and what you're going to use, because maybe you do have to tap into it at some point. But you definitely learn that stuff more as it layers on, as you get into the fleet, into the
Yeah.
FRS and everything else. So speaking of that, where did you go to the FRS?
So I was at HS10 in San
Okay,
Diego.
I was still
Yeah.
around. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So actually, when I was checking in, Steve Ayers is going through the Cat 2 syllabus. And so I saw him like briefly for the first 2 weeks, when I was checking in, as a brand new third class. I remember talking to him, and he's like, if you get a chance, go to HS4. So he's like, that's my first squadron. And so I was just like, okay. And then, Steve being a guy that, grew up in the same part of the country I did, so I was like, all right.
Want to show your support for Calm the Chaos and the stories of our nation's elite rescue swimmers? Check out our exclusive merch line: shirts, hats, and stickers designed for those who live with courage and purpose. Military and first responders get 10% off each order. Just use the code SARRESCUE10, SARRESCUE, the number 10, SARRESCUE10, at checkout. Grab yours today on Amazon or briandickinson.net/store and wear your sport proudly so others may live.
And then, so I always kept it in the back of my mind going through the syllabus. It was great to get back in the helicopter, but, the first flight, just it was a hot day, you're wearing all your gear, and then, the hydraulic fluid, and like, you kind of smell JP5. Like, I got queasy, and I ended up getting sick in the back of the helicopter. And it's just like one of those things that was just like, man, like this is a job I signed up for, and I can't even keep my stomach on the first flight. So, I mean, in all fairness, we were doing a lot of auto rotations down in IB with student pilots, and some of it was a little shaky. So, but it was definitely
Did your instructor have like a tuna sandwich? Because I know that's what they tried to do to me, and I was feeling a little queasy, and just heaved a little, nothing came up.
It wasn't a tuna sandwich; it was a can of sardines. So,
okay, well there you go.
Yeah.
So have that in there.
Yeah, so that definitely did not help. So yeah,
that's just the instructor just being mean. That's
yeah.
That's funny. So okay, but you got past that
Mm.
after a couple more flights. Sometimes it's good to get that out of the way, but yeah, that can also get in your head. It's like, oh crap,
Yeah.
can I do this? Okay, so you made it through that. Did you have a winging party?
We did. And it probably wasn't the same when you went through. It's probably a little bit watered down just because, some rules and regulations kind of came into play in between, I think, your career and my career.
Sure.
But we definitely had a wing party celebration. We didn't really talk too much about it or make it, too well known. But, in the Navy, obviously traditions are very important. And so as future, a brand new air crewman, we wanted to keep that tradition alive. So
good for you.
yeah. Yeah.
Was Steve at your party?
He was not. He was already back in the fleet. So, it's basically a handful of the instructors and then the graduating class. So, yeah. I won't mention
that
names.
He graduated like 2 weeks or something before me, and he was there punching wings in my chest. Like, really?
Yeah.
That's just what you do. Like,
Yeah.
I got mine. Cool. So, where did you end up? Actually, no. Where'd you go to SEER?
Warner Springs. Yeah. So, and that was, I mean, I describe it to people as it's just like a really bad camping trip, So,
yeah, like the worst camping trip.
yeah. Yeah. And my NAP partner was I'll never forget this. He was a P3 pilot. And the guy was from New York City, like just through conversation, he didn't get his driver's license until he was in college. And so it was just I was like, that's weird.
That says it all.
Yeah. And he's never been camping. And so I teamed up with this guy, and, there's a point in the training where he got rolled up, because he wanted to cross this valley. I was like, all due respect, sir, I think we should stick to this ridge and say cover. And he's like, well, the waypoint is there. We're going there. I'm like, I'm not going there. And sure enough, he walked out maybe 100 yards, and then, over the horizon, this truck comes, and it's the SEER instructors, and they wrapped them up pretty good. So a little confusing for me. I was like, oh, what do I do now?
I know.
So, yeah.
Just stay low.
Yeah.
And then they're probably beating him for, if they do find you, they'd really
yeah.
do their thing.
I did not want to trade places with him at all. But obviously, eventually, everybody's got to experience the captivity part, and those are a few nights where you don't get, as you don't get any sleep, and they just play all kinds of weird soundtracks, and and the hardest part for me was like, when we're right before the whole final scenario when SEER school is completed. The instructors were eating barbecue chicken. And so, you're eating bugs and tree bark for, the last few days.
Yeah.
And I remember just like thinking like, if I grab this guy's AK-47, and then I could probably grab some of that chicken too. Yeah.
What would you grab first though?
I'd probably go with the AK. I mean, even though I really, really wanted that chicken, but obviously I didn't do that, But I mean, it was just like his torture. I mean, it looked great. It was just, barbecue chicken and the smell, like it was just it was overcoming me. I was just like, I just want to have barbecue chicken right now. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a bad camping trip, but it also in Warner Springs it was the other thing that was tough. It was hot. Like we went there in the summer, so I mean it was
Mhm.
over 105 every day. And you're just
Mhm.
walking around and
Freezing at night.
yeah, yeah. So
Yep. Yeah, I did the same. What would you say? I mean, SEER is an amazing school, but you never leave the same way you went in. What do you think your biggest takeaway from SEER was?
um, you know, for a guy that struggled academically, when I was in that scenario, be able to recite the Geneva Convention, the articles of the Geneva Convention, while they're going through their process. And I still remember a lot of it today. Like Article 7. You're allowed to send postage to family. And I remember, you know, Article 7 being from Colorado. Okay, that's John Elway's number. Post, that's a pass pattern. So like I was able to like kind of key that up to where I could recall it very quickly. And I did that for all the articles.
Mm.
So, when they put you in the box, I got waterboarded. So they're
Yes,
still doing that
congrats.
back then.
That
Yeah.
means you died.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're during the questions, like they're asking, like, what was written on the side of the aircraft. And I was a young kid. So I was like, pen 15. So this guy writes it down. He looks at it. He looks at me. He's like, hmm. And then that's when I got escorted to the hydration station. So
Oh, there you go.
yeah, yeah,
Well, yeah, no, it's neat how like I don't like you were even saying with rescue swimmer school, like while you're, hanging from the pull-up bar and they're asking you about disentanglement procedures, they're throughout all of these evolutions, you're put into these like physically like way beyond next level demanding situations of what your body's never even dealt with, and now they're making trying to make your mind think. I
yeah,
think that's where that whole calm and the chaos comes in because it's filtering through all of this chaotic, just physically depleted scenarios, and now I have to think. And
yeah,
that's how you can effectively be a good operator. That's how you can, in the worst, someone's worst day,
yeah,
it's our best day because we're able to filter through that and save lives.
yeah,
And the same, everyone's personalities are different, right? It's unique to the individual. And the fact that you were able to figure out, using John Elway and like these different scenarios of that are unique and things that in your life that are personal to you, able to understand like the Geneva Convention and to be able to recite, certain information. I had to do the same like for all the different submarines. I just came up with
yeah,
acronyms and I could not repeat them I
yeah.
could, but I won't because they were not okay.
Right.
Um, but
It's
that's how
probably the, it's probably
yeah.
the same acronyms that got the gouge like through the years, because there's a few that they still stick with me today. And like once you hear it, like you can't unhear it. Like it's always there. So
Mhm.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's good. Glad it's still helping others. So okay, so what squadron did you end up at
HS4. So
there? Nice.
opportunity came up, and then you had Kim Pilkey on your podcast, and he was actually my shop chief, and he helped out a lot. I told him I want to be at 4, and so
Hey, if you love high stakes action, military intrigue, and stories that keep you turning pages late into the night, you won't want to miss my new thriller, Bloodline of Redemption. From a rogue Russian submarine on a covert nuclear mission to the unforgiving peaks of the world's deadliest mountains, it's a nonstop ride of suspense and survival. Order your copy now on Amazon or wherever books are sold and dive into the mission.
I don't know what magic or string he pulled, but I ended up at 4 with him. So
Yeah, a good
yeah,
dude.
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, tell us about that.
So I checked in. when HS4 was they're coming back on their Lincoln deployment. And that was the deployment that was like 9 months. It got extended. So my first day checking in was their homecoming day. And, so everyone's kind of going on palm period. So the first few weeks, it was, pretty quiet in the shop, not a lot of flying, just, as a brand new third class, just diving into NATOPS, Um, and then we started the workups for our John C. Stennis deployment shortly after that. And so, going through that, learning from the crew chiefs, trying to knock out that PQS as fast as possible, get flight time. Going to Fallon, Nevada, which was also a unique experience. For those that have never been to Fallon, it's a very special place. And then so we did the Stennis cruise, and it's pretty much operations normal. A lot of plane guard, not a lot going on. But then one night, I was woken up by the ASDO, and he told me that he's like, "Hey, there's a plane crash. Like we're near Japan." He's like, "There's a plane crash. We're manning up crews." And so that moment, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. That's when it kind of like is like, okay, this is real world stuff. This is what I went through, almost 2 years of training to see. Was not the first crew on there, but we flew out to where the crash was. What happened was there's an S3, it was VS-35, the Blue Wolves, low visibility night. The pilots were distracted. Their altitude was low. They basically hit a pinnacle in the middle of the ocean, like the small mountain island. And
there's a lot of them out there.
yeah, and so when we get on site, there was obviously low light conditions. They didn't have time to eject, so it was at that point, we knew it was going to be recovery. But I just remember flip up the NVGs and just looking, there's just like a trail of fire just going down this mountain island, and you smell smoke. You're trying to look for anything that you could really identify, but it just looked like somebody just took a bag of garbage and just threw it down a mountainside. They end up calling in the Air Force PJs to do the recovery. And then there's the senior crew. I think there was 2 or 3 crews that escorted the remains back to Japan for staging, and then the service members went back to the States after that. But that's kind of like my first look as okay, this is real things happen. This is not it's not a movie. This is what you could expect for the rest of your time, dealing with situations like that. So
yeah. Yeah, that might have been Erica Gibson working with them on that one.
Erica Gibson, actually, she was there at 10 when I was there. So
yeah, she had a similar story working with the PJs for a recovery like that.
Yeah.
In Japan, I believe.
Yeah. So
Iwo Jima. Yeah, man, you're right. It takes, we want a rescue so bad because we're trained so hard to do it.
Yeah.
But the reality is that, a lot of them are recoveries, or just, I don't even know what you call something. I guess it's still a recovery, but it's horrific. And just to see that, and a lot of times, the people, like, especially in the AW community, I don't know if the S3s had AWs on board at that point, or if they were tankers, or
they were primarily tankers. So this is like one of the last deployments of the S3.
okay.
There was I think he was an AE. There's one enlisted guy that was in the crew, but he was an air crewman, and the details are a little hazy for me, but I mean it was 4 individuals, and then I personally didn't know any of them, but there's a lot of people obviously in the air wing that did. So you got to hear stories about them, and then a lot of people were pretty upset, obviously. So yeah, but the rest of the deployment kind of was pretty much incident free after that, and then went back, did the palm period, and then we switched air wings. So we did the Reagan maiden deployment. And that's when I had my second rescue. Well, excuse me. Yeah, it was my second rescue in that. But in between, the first rescue was doing a training, going out to El Centro, doing a night turf flight, just trying to get some flight time, get some PQS signed off. And we were flying out. It was like right around peaky time. We see this like sheriff's helicopter just like kind of orbiting this area. So the hack went up comms. Long story short, there was a group of hikers, like college age, and this guy fell off a waterfall. They're in this canyon, and he broke his leg, and so they called 911 because they couldn't get out. And so the sheriff was looking for him, and then so when we went up comms with the sheriff, my hack was like, we're combat search and rescue rig. We have night vision goggles, we have FLIR, and at that point the sheriff was like, hey, it's your show, like you guys take the lead. And we found the hikers shortly after that. My crew chief, guy named Clint Wolf, and this guy was, as a second class, he had the knowledge of a chief. Like he just one of the best crewmen I ever flew with. He's a literally encyclopedia on everything in the helicopter. So he took control, and he's like, all right, he's like, Collin, you're right gunner. There's another guy, Andy Russell, left gunner. Found the individual in a canyon, and then so we switched spots. I was left gunner, and then Clint was operating the hoist. They lowered Andy down, and it was kind of crazy because we were in this canyon, and we literally had like a half rotor blade to a rotor blade on both sides. So it was a very confined area, and so Andy went down, and we brought him back up. Obviously, the guy, he was in pain, but he was conscious. He was talking, and so we took him to an airfield and dropped him off. And then, by that point, we were gone for a couple hours, so we just RTB'd. So technically, it's a mountain rescue, which is good to kind of have that feather in my cap.
Yeah.
As a junior guy, and then going.
Did you guys put him in a litter? Did you guys stabilize his leg or anything?
We didn't put him in a litter. He hoisted up. It was like, it wasn't a compound fracture. Like, I think it was just, yeah. So, and just I don't think we had time for a litter just because, the pilots had to activate sea power, because there was no wind. And so it was really hard for the pilots to hold a hover. And it's just kind of like, let's get them and get out, kind of like life over limb type thing.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so it was, it was a great experience. As far as being there to help somebody like when they're in that time in their life when like an extreme need, and possible.
Right place, right time.
Yeah.
Sure. Cool. What about your next rescue?
So next rescue, fast forward, I got my crew chief qualification. I was flying with a guy, and who was coming up on his crew chief board, Matt Louviere, and we just pulled out of Brisbane, Australia. So, you've been on deployments, paint the picture. Australia is a great port call. So we're all a little, yeah. So we're all a little tired, from
from all the activities.
Yeah. 4 days of activities, and it was at night. There's a hop up crew switch. And I remember the crew chief asked who my pilots were, and I told him, he's like, hey, look, man, he's like, it is darker than a coal miner is, deep in the coal mine. So like, make sure you back the pilots on the CDU. And it was a really low light conditions, and so Matt and I go down to conference 2. We're talking about scenarios. We talked about a rescue scenario. We kind of talk through it, and then it's just that moment in the flight where things are just kind of quiet. Nobody's really talking. Listen to the radios, and I look over out the cabin door, and on the horizon I see these like 3 like flashes, like big flashes, like explosions. And it kind of time stood still at that moment. I was like, what the hell is that? And then shortly after that, Air Boss is on the radio saying, Black Knight 614, Buster back to mom, you know, aircraft in the water. And so like that point is like, all right, game on. And so, Matt, he I'd never seen a human being move that fast, because he had obviously the wetsuit on, but he's, flight suit, and then like, he's like the Tasmanian devil, just there's
Yeah.
a,
Close to Tasmania too.
yeah, yeah. So, and then, we did a crew rape, that whole thing. And so we were on scene on night vision goggles, and then the carrier threw out like a whole bunch of smoke floats, and they turn on every exterior light of the ship. So obviously NVGs are, worthless at that point. And so I remember just like, seconds seemed like minutes, minutes seemed like hours, just like looking for this guy. And then we found him, and, lowered Matt down, and everything like just it seemed to be taking forever. But in that moment, I remember, okay, control your voice. So I remember it being a very conscious effort to like, talk calmly, slowly, communicate, not add more chaos to the situation. Um, Matt grabbed him, did not put him in litter just because of, again, time restraints is his call in the water. Brought the guy back up. Guy was fine.
What was the scenario? What eject? Like what aircraft?
Oh, so I'm sorry. It was an F-18. Basically, he was too low. He hit the back ramp of the carrier, and the
Oh,
jet
wow.
split in half. And so the fuselage goes screaming across the angle. The engines they fall off the stern of the ship,
Wow.
and he punched out. There's actually a clip on YouTube of the Platt video that shows it. I can
Okay.
share. I can share that with
Yeah.
you. And what's also crazy is I didn't see that Platt video because shortly after that I got out of the Navy. I didn't see that Platt video until I was in college, and I was watching the Discovery Channel, and it was an episode on aircraft carrier flight decks, like one of the most dangerous jobs.
Mhm.
And my girlfriend at the time was in the shower, and the narrator starts talking about USS Ronald Reagan, and he's talking about a crash on the flight deck, and I start screaming at my girlfriend. I'm like, "Get out of here! Get out of here!" And I'm like, "This is my rescue!" And she didn't really know too much about like what we did, or like she's like, "Oh, cool." And I'm just like,
I know.
so
It's like kids, right? You can do the coolest thing. One of two people who have soloed Mount Everest on a given day. My kids are like, "Meh."
yeah.
Like, okay.
uh so um yeah, so the guy, I remember his call sign was Shrimp, and obviously it's a play on words because this was a large human being. He was
Mhm.
like 6'3", probably like well over 200 pounds. He was just a big dude. um and then it was kind of a small world because I was getting ready to get out, go to college, and he was a CSU grad, Colorado State. And so I saw him in the P-way, and we're having a conversation of like what's your next step? And I was like, well, I want to get out and go to school. I was like, oh, where do you want to go to school at? I'm like, CSU is like, if you want, I can write you a letter of recommendation because I'm a grad there. He's like, go Rams. I'm like, that'd be amazing. So literally in my application process, I have this letter from this guy on command letterhead, saying, hey, Collin actually he saved my life when my F-18 crashed on a flight deck. So it was a pretty
Wow.
powerful, probably the best letter of recommendation I've ever had in my life. So
Well, that anyone's ever had.
yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, no, it was so within one reporting period, I basically had two rescues. I had a mountain rescue and then a maritime rescue. And so I remember at quarters, it's like in lieu of first NAM, mountain rescue, and in lieu of second NAM, you know, maritime rescue. So it's kind of a cool thing to sit there. And obviously, they only pinned one NAM on my flight suit because they, but yeah, it was a
Yeah, I'm
It's
gonna.
one of my, yeah, yeah.
That's cool. So I know I kind of like jumped forward to see what the wreck was, but as far as swimmer in the water, getting him up and everything else, determined not a back injury, and it was a pretty flawless at that point, or was there anything interesting that occurred?
Um, so it's pretty flawless. And when we're getting ready to land and drop the guy off, I was like, man, I was like, my chief is going to be mad because I feel like this took forever. That thought was in the back of my
Things that
mind.
are going through your head, like it
Yeah,
just saved a life, but
yeah. But we didn't do it fast enough. But the time when he ejected, the time he was back on deck was like 20 minutes. So it was pretty quick, and we were 10 miles away. So
yeah.
it was a pretty expedited rescue. And the conditions, obviously low light, and then not be able to immediately find the guy because when you're flying around, you're looking for a needle in a haystack,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of strobes. There's matrix lights. There's Mark 58s there. So just a lot of like, okay, where is he? And the white reflective tape on the helmet definitely helped, but it wasn't easy to find. So
Yeah. Yeah, people, I think just the normal person would have no idea. Like when we're out there, like a man overboard or something, and you hear it in the headlines, and they'll call off a search after, so many days. I mean, the ocean is huge, and it's a tiny, tiny little cell out there, that amongst billions that it's so hard to find.
yeah,
You do everything, all your different search patterns, even if you know the last, point. I mean, there's all that wreckage out there, um, pitch black. Your NVGs are pretty useless at that point. It takes, 20 plus minutes for your eyes to adapt. And now the ship gets excited. They're flooding the place with, Mark, what, 58s and
yeah,
all their lights, and now your night vision is trash. You're amped up trying to save a life as fast as you can. There's so much going on there, and you have to, like you were saying, just filter through, remain calm, keep the pilots calm
yeah.
because they're asking for, updates and everything else they're searching as well. So yeah, there's a lot that goes on, and yeah, if you're 10 miles out, and it's funny because like 20 minutes, like that's
A
pretty
lifetime.
amazing.
Yeah, yeah. It felt like a lifetime.
Hmm.
What's crazy is that my pilot, the hack, was also the same hack that I had during the mountain rescue.
Nice.
So every time that we flew together, they're like something happened, And then fast forward a few months, still in deployment. Uh, we're the Alert 30 crew, and they called a man overboard, and and I was actually flying with another crew chief, and we kind of did the rock paper scissors. Who's dressing out, before during the brief, and I chose to dress out. And so, in the middle of the night, you hear those six whistle blasts. It gets the adrenaline pumping. So I'm sprinting through the P ways, heading to the PR shop. Can we get dressed out? Sprint to the flight deck. Pilots are going through their checks. We got a data point, so we fly out there. Again, another low light condition. So um, and we see a strobe in the water, and I get lowered down. I swim up to it, and it's just an empty float coat. And so, like my first thought was like, oh, damn, where's this guy? I lost him.
Mm.
But looking at the float coat is zipped up. So what happened was this, guy on the flight deck put his float coat on the rail, and it blew over. And so once it got wet, the Sea Wars activated the strobe and everything like that. And the aft lookout saw it. And so I saved the Navy a couple $100 by recovering a float coat. So
Nice.
yeah.
You get a NAM for that?
No, no.
What the
The SDO he routed up, and they're like the Russian chain of command's like, no, we're not doing that. So yeah,
heck? They actually tried.
yeah, yeah. So
That's fun. At least you got to get a little swim in.
yeah, and that was that was near Guam.
Mm.
So it
Water
was
was nice.
yeah, the water's really nice, really warm, kind of eerily warm. You know, it was like bath water. So
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
so I got 2.1 rescues.
Yep. Yeah, we're gonna count it. Yeah, it's amazing. Yes, some people do a 20, 30-year career and never enter the water, but
Yeah.
you're always ready. Everyone's always ready to do it. But if you happen to be at the right place, right time, like some people get a bunch. Okay, so you got out, went to college,
Mhm.
and decided to go back in.
Well, so right when I was getting out, my chief, it was Richard Ham. He, I told him I was going to get out to go to school, and he's like, "Why are you getting out?" He's like, "You literally have the best job," and he's like, "You had a great start to your career. Why would you want to like stop?" And so, as a young guy and like I was kind of cocky, I was like, "Well, I'll come back, but when I do come back, you're going to have to call me sir."
Nice.
And completely talking out my ass. I really did not have a plan to to do anything, except go to school and just kind of figure it out.
Hmm.
And so I went to a Division II school in Durango, Colorado, called Fort Lewis. Um, you know, Walked on the football team, and is that's a time when they were transitioning from the old GI Bill to the post 9/11 GI Bill, and
Hmm.
so somehow my paperwork got kind of lost in the process, and so I didn't have a way to pay for college. Um, and So I remember I went to the financial aid office. I'm sitting in the waiting room, and I look over on the table. There's a pamphlet that says U.S. Navy on it. And there's obviously not a ROTC unit in at the school. It's a very small college, and it's like that's kind of weird. So I pick it up. It's a commissioning program called BDCP, Bachelor Degree Completion Program. And so what it is if you're within a 2-year window of graduating with a bachelor's, they basically put you on active duty, and you're obviously subject to your analysis and PRTs. You got to keep up your grades, and so I applied for that, and I got picked up. And then when I graduated, I went to OCS and I became a surface warfare officer. Um, and so my first ship was an amphib, USS Anchorage, and then with my background, they obviously appointed me as a SAR officer. And then from there, when it came time to choose orders, I really enjoyed the carrier life. So I went to the USS Truman, and again, I was a SAR officer there. And we're getting ready to do our major inspection. This is kind of how small the community is. Like um, Senior Chief Showerman was the main inspector of our rescue or the rescue swimmer in the deck department. So
Hmm.
I remember standing on the quarterdeck in the XO. He was also a helo guy. He's like, "How do you feel about this, Lieutenant?" And so I feel good. I think we'll be fine. And a couple minutes later, showtime comes across the quarterdeck, and like I didn't know he was the inspector, but I mean, it was just like he's like, "Koss," and it's like showtime. And so the XO was like, you can see like the relief, it's like, okay, this is gonna be good, like So obviously we did well, but yeah. And Showtime is also at HS4. He's also one of my A school instructors too. So
Oh, nice.
I've known him for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a small community. That's so awesome. Yeah, you're just name dropping everyone who's been guests
Yeah,
on
I
here.
mean, I'm telling you, Brian, like I've seen a lot of familiar faces on your podcast, man. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So, okay, so now what leads you, like, where are you now? I know you had to extend for an additional year, but tell us about your plans, like where you're at now and like your retirement plans.
So basically, you know, as far as retirement, I'm at INTAG Phoenix, which is a recruiting command. So I'm the enlisted programs officer. So I basically am the department head of all enlisted recruiting. And that's Arizona and Mexico, West Texas, and also Durango, Colorado. So I cover the southwest part of Colorado. So kind of full circle.
Mhm.
Um, but between the Truman and this command, I I was a training advisor in Saudi Arabia. So I lived in Riyadh for a year, and then after that, I worked for the SEAL OCM as a part of one of the assessors, and like just kind of like screen some of the applicants that are coming in through for officer programs. And gotta look at how the BUD/S training pipeline goes. Because we bring these kids out to San Diego and they get a taste of that. For 2 weeks they get wet and sandy, and then after that I went to the Pentagon and I worked in N7, so training, and then from the Pentagon to Arizona. So total active duty time when I retire will be 23 years. So you know it's been a very rewarding career. Paid for education, paid for grad school. Got a chance to see the world, and and then just still see guys where they go from after their service. Where
Mhm.
they. I know Showtime is working in Pensacola.
Mhm.
So and then it's just I don't know. I couldn't have it any other way.
Nice. That's a great career. Retirement can be its own beast. You've been doing this for so long. Are you ready for that?
Uh, that's a great question. So the people I work with today, they don't remember 9/11, because they're too young or they weren't
Mhm.
born yet.
Right.
So as far as Navy standards, I feel like I'm the old guy now.
You are.
Yeah. So you know, I'm ready just because I have a daughter that's turned 5 months tomorrow. So be able to be that full time dad. Be there and not to worry
Nice.
about deployments. And then just the next career though. I got a few sticks in the fire, but not 100% sure on which direction I want to go. But I do like the service aspect. Community service, or serving the community, and or somehow maybe get another government agency and
Mhm.
and continue that. But yeah, that's a question that I don't really have an answer for right now. But I'm sure, like everything else in my life, like things will fall into place the way they need to fall in place. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you need any help there, I have a lot of connections just from this and just all, I've been out since 99.
okay, yeah.
Always here to help. For your 23 years, well, are you at 22 right now?
I'm at 22. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. For the past 22, you've touched a lot of different areas. What would you say the highlight, pivotal point of your career was? If you could go back to any one duty station or point in your life in the military, what would you choose?
Um, that's a great question. I remember, when I passed multis at SAR school, it was a huge relief, and I felt so proud and just like energized. That was very early on in the career. But
Mhm.
my favorite duty station, after 23 years when I retire, will definitely go back to HS4, just because the unity in the squadron, in the shop. I did not find that anywhere else in my career. Like when you deployed, I never dreaded deployments. Because you're literally going out there with, like, 25 of your best friends. We
Mhm.
were we were a really tight group. We worked hard, we play hard, and we try to stay out of trouble. So, but the rescues definitely they're awesome. But what I miss the most is just hang out with the guys. Just in the shop. The camaraderie and the little bit of you know picking on the new guy type thing. Like that's definitely the most enjoyable part of my career. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting too because you think of the age you were at back then. It's almost like the start of a new job. It's always so interesting because it's new and but yeah, there's nothing that quite compares. I think you're right to like those first duty stations, actually being
Yeah.
able to do the thing that you trained so hard to do, and you're surrounded by those same people. And you're right, you play hard, and it's such an interesting contrast. Like even when I met my wife, it's like she saw us on, and me and my squadron Hs2 on the outside, and it's amazing to think of those guys and the stuff we were doing, how professional we were when we were in the aircraft and doing our job. And it's like we're young, but it's like you kind of earned it too,
Yeah,
because you're willing to risk your life to save another that's
yeah,
potentially trying to kill you because they're in shock and in panic.
yeah.
It's definitely a unique space. Well, usually I do a scenario. You've had a couple cool scenarios. I got to think of something that's interesting that kind of branches across. Um, I don't have my list in front of me. Let's see. What's something that a rescue, because you had over land, you've had you had a valiant rescue of a life vest. You had a F-18 cut in half. What's something that you wished you could have done? Something that just because you're checking lots of boxes here.
One thing I really wanted to do, I don't know if this is a good answer to your question, but I wanted to go to the advanced rescue swimmer school,
Hmm.
because that was like the, you know, but as far as my career, took in all the moments, at that time, just because, when you're going through the grind, like day to day flying, and and then your routine, like it's a normal thing. But and then I guess like in a lot of ways, I feel like I took that time for granted. I didn't
Hmm.
take any pictures in port calls. Like I didn't.
That's probably good though, right?
Yeah, I mean, pictures did get me in trouble early on. So, but I mean, I guess like really just taking the moments as they came.
Mhm.
It's just kind of like it's like
It's
didn't really
almost like you
appreciate.
never think those moments are going to end, and then
Right.
they
Yeah.
end before you even realize it.
Yeah.
And then it's just a blur.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. All right, well, I'll give you a scenario. Let's go to advanced SAR. You are going to go out and do a rescue. You're in what do you got? A dolphin, and you are the rescue swimmer, but you think you're in training. Another dolphin goes down, but you're doing some high surf rescues in the cold waters off of Astoria, near the rock edges, and full crew of six goes down. Now you're turned into, from training to rescue swimmer. So your mindset just has to shift. You think you're going to go out and just do like a litter rescue, just training. What's going through your head?
Okay. Obviously, I'm looking where where the sea's going. If it's crashing against the rocks, I would definitely want to take that into account. Surveying the scene as much as possible before I leave the aircraft. Try to do an early identity, like which guy needs to ride up first. And also communicate. I'm sure the rest of the crew would be there. If there's an opportunity to deploy an additional swimmer, because that six bodies in the water in a high sea state. Um, in real world, a lot of things can go sideways pretty quick. But once I hit the water, swim as hard as I can to the first guy and try to work as fast and proficient as I can. The litter is probably not, unless the circumstances dictate, the litter is probably not a thing I want to use. Just again, life over limb, and obviously be cognizant of fuel and debris in the water. Um, yeah, and then just work as fast and hard as I possibly can to get all six survivors up in the helicopter. But I think in that scenario, though, perfect world, they would probably deploy an additional swimmer, if that resource is available.
Yeah, I think if you're an advanced SAR, you're pretty packed with additional swimmers
Yeah,
because you're all out there training together. So
yeah,
yeah, and that dolphin's pretty small, right? So you almost
yeah.
kick the litter out. It's getting in the way. Yep, nice work. You see, you went to the advanced SAR and then you got a rescue out of it because that's just kind of how you roll.
Beautiful.
Well, cool, Colin. It's such a pleasure to have you on. You have a definitely a unique pathway throughout the military. A lot of incredible experiences, but also being on the enlisted and the officer side of it. What's a bit of wisdom that you would leave our listeners with?
This advice was given to me early on in my career, and it's something I kind of always held close to my heart. And that's the best investment you could ever make. It's not in real estate, it's not in the stock market. It's investing in yourself. So, really invest in yourself. If you're passionate about something, there's going to be a lot of roadblocks along the way, but just always keep driving forward. Never quit. And and if you visualize it and like write it down, just kind of have that true north setting. I do believe that consciously or subconsciously you'll get there. So
Yeah,
always invest in yourself.
great advice. We should all invest in ourselves today, whatever that is. And sometimes you just got to journal and see what is the thing that you haven't been doing, you've been holding back. And, how is that impacting your life? Go for broke on yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool, Collin. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. It's been just great to connect with you offline as well. And, I'll be out in Phoenix probably quite a bit since my son is out there. So I'll definitely reach out to you so we can go grab some coffee or something. And
Yeah, that'd be great. Awesome. Well, thanks, Brian. Appreciate everything you do. And it's been an honor to be on your podcast.
thanks. Appreciate it. All right, everyone else, we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Calm in the Chaos podcast. Please subscribe to be notified of future episodes. And if you enjoyed what you just heard, please leave a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts. Until next time, get out there and make a difference so others may live.